The moment Jasmine Brooks asked her childhood best friend to teach her how to seduce men, she sealed both their fates. What started as innocent lessons became a dangerous game neither could win, because the only man she'd ever truly captivated was the one standing right in front of her, dying inside with every word she spoke. Before we dive into this powerful story, make sure to hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story like this, and drop a comment below letting us know where you're watching from. I'd love to hear from you. The Han River glittered like scattered diamonds under Seoul's endless skyline. The city pulsed with energy, taxis honking, street vendors calling out, neon signs painting the night in electric blues and pinks. But 40 floors above the chaos, inside Junho Kim's penthouse apartment, everything was quiet except for the soft jazz bleeding through expensive speakers. Jasmine Brooks sat cross-legged on his leather couch, barefoot, wearing ripped jeans and an old Columbia University sweatshirt 3 sizes too big. Her thick curls were piled in a messy bun on top of her head, and she was demolishing a bag of honey butter chips like it was her last meal on Earth. She looked completely at home, like she'd been a fixture in this space forever. In a way, she had been. Junho stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, scotch in hand, watching the city breathe. He was tall, lean, dressed in designer everything even at home because old habits from years of business meetings died hard. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his posture impeccable, his expression carefully neutral, the face he'd perfected for boardrooms and business deals. But Jasmine had never treated him like the billionaire CEO everyone else saw. To her, he was still just Junho, the quiet kid who'd shared his lunch with her on her first day at Seoul Foreign School when she was 7 and terrified and didn't speak a word of Korean. "Junho," she said, suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence they'd settled into. He glanced over his shoulder. I need your help with something." She set the chips aside, her expression shifting from relaxed to serious. "And before you say no, just hear me out." Something in her tone made his stomach tighten with unease. "What kind of help?" Jasmine took a deep breath, like she was preparing to jump off a cliff. "I need you to teach me how to be attractive, to men. Like actually attractive, not just cool friend attractive." The scotch glass nearly slipped from Junho's fingers. He turned slowly, certain he'd misheard. "What?" "You heard me." She stood up, crossing her arms defensively. "I'm 23 years old, Junho. 23. And you know how many guys have actually been interested in me? Like, romantically interested? 0. Literally 0. I'm always the homie, the buddy, the girl they play video games with and ask for advice about other girls. I'm invisible." He stared at her, his mind racing, his heart doing something complicated and painful in his chest. "You're not invisible." "Yes, I am," she insisted, her voice cracking slightly. "And I'm tired of it. I'm tired of being passed over. I'm tired of watching everyone around me fall in love while I'm stuck in the friend zone with literally every man I meet. I want someone to look at me the way—" She stopped abruptly, swallowing whatever she'd been about to say. "I just want someone to see me as a woman, not as one of the guys." Junho set his glass down carefully on the windowsill, buying himself a moment to think, to process, to figure out how to respond without revealing the truth that had been eating him alive for the past 5 years. The truth that Jasmine Brooks wasn't invisible at all, that she was the only woman he saw in any room they were in together, that he'd turned down dates, ignored advances, and kept every woman at arm's length because none of them were her, could never be her, would never come close to being her. "Why me?" he asked quietly, his voice strained despite his best efforts. She laughed, a short, desperate sound. "Are you kidding? Look at you. You've had girlfriends since we were teenagers. Beautiful, sophisticated women who hung on your every word. You know what men want, what attracts them, what makes them chase. And more importantly, you know me. You'll tell me the truth even if it hurts. You won't sugarcoat anything or try to spare my feelings. If only you knew." He thought bitterly. "If only you had any idea what you're asking. Jasmine, you don't need—" "Please." The single word stopped him cold. She moved closer, her dark eyes meeting his, pleading, "I know it's weird. I know it's a lot to ask. But I trust you more than anyone in the world. If anyone can help me figure out what I'm doing wrong, it's you. Just a few lessons. That's all I'm asking. A few lessons on how to be the kind of woman men actually want." Every instinct screamed at him to refuse, to shut this down immediately, to protect himself from the exquisite torture of teaching the woman he loved how to attract other men, how to give to strangers what he desperately wanted for himself. But she was looking at him with those eyes, with that vulnerability she rarely showed anyone, and Junho had never been able to deny her anything. Not when they were kids. Not now. "You're going to regret this," a voice in his head warned. "This is going to destroy you." "Fine," he heard himself say, his voice rough. "I'll help you." The smile that broke across her face was brilliant, genuine, and it physically hurt to see. "Really? Oh my God, thank you. Thank you so much, Junho. I promise I'll be a good student. I'll do whatever you tell me. That's what I'm afraid of," he thought darkly. As she bounced on her toes with excitement, already chattering about where to start, what to learn first, Junho poured himself another drink and downed it in one burning swallow. He'd just agreed to, his own personal hell. Teaching Jasmine how to captivate men when she'd already captured him completely, effortlessly, without even trying. Teaching her how to be irresistible when she'd been irresistible to him since the moment she'd smiled at him across a middle school cafeteria 15 years ago. This wasn't going to end well. He knew it with absolute certainty. But watching her grin, watching her eyes light up with hope, Junho also knew he'd endure any amount of pain if it made her happy, even if it killed him slowly, lesson by devastating lesson. "Okay, try again. But this time, don't look like you're approaching a firing squad." Jasmine shot Junho a murderous glare from across his bedroom, where she was attempting to walk in heels for what felt like the 100th time. The shoes were modest, barely 3 inches, but she wobbled like a newborn giraffe with each step. "These are torture devices," she muttered, gripping the edge of his dresser for support. "Why is pain considered sexy? Who decided this was a good idea?" Junho leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, fighting back a smile. He'd rolled up his sleeves at some point during this disaster of a lesson, and his hair was slightly mussed from running his hands through it in exasperation. Heels aren't about pain. They're about posture. They force you to straighten your spine, push your shoulders back, elongate your legs. It changes how you carry yourself. "They change how I carry myself straight to the emergency room," she grumbled, taking another tentative step. Her ankle twisted slightly, and she lurched forward with a yelp. Junho moved without thinking, crossing the room in 3 long strides. His hands caught her waist, steadying her, pulling her back against his chest. She fit perfectly there, her head just under his chin, her body warm and solid and real in his arms. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Jasmine's breathing hitched, and Junho felt the small tremor that ran through her. His thumbs pressed against her hip bones through the thin fabric of her dress, the dress he'd carefully selected because he knew the deep emerald color would look stunning against her skin, even though choosing it had felt like self-inflicted torture. "You're overthinking it," he said quietly, his voice dropping to that low register he couldn't quite control when she was this close. His breath stirred the curls at her temple. "Stop fighting the shoes. Let them work for you. Shift your weight to your toes. Keep your core tight. And trust yourself." She exhaled shakily. "Easy for you to say. You're not the one risking a broken ankle. I won't let you fall." The words came out rougher than he intended, loaded with meaning he couldn't take back. Jasmine turned her head slightly, enough that he could see her profile, the curve of her cheek, the fullness of her lips. "Promise?" "Always," he thought. "For anything. Forever." "Promise," he said instead, and forced himself to step back, to release her, to put necessary distance between them before he did something catastrophic like pull her closer and never let go. She steadied herself, took a breath, and tried again. This time, her steps were more confident, more fluid. She walked the length of the room and back, and by the end, there was something almost graceful about her movement. "See?" Junho managed a smile that felt like it might crack his face. "You're a natural, liar." She laughed, but she was glowing with accomplishment. "But I'll take the compliment." 3 days later, they sat across from each other at a small cafe in Gangnam. Junho had chosen a table in the corner, deliberately intimate, deliberately forcing proximity. Jasmine had dressed up another outfit he'd helped select, though she didn't know how much it had cost him emotionally to see her in that fitted black turtleneck and burgundy skirt. Her hair was down today, curls framing her face, and she'd put on makeup. Not much, just enough to emphasize her eyes, her cheekbones, the softness of her mouth. She looked devastating, and completely oblivious to it. Okay, she said businesslike, pulling out a small notebook. What's today's lesson? Eye contact? Junho replied, sipping his Americano to give his hands something to do besides reach for her. It's one of the most powerful tools in attraction. Most people underestimate it. She wrote something down, earnest and focused. What do you mean? Look at me. Jasmine glanced up from her notes, confused. I am looking at you. No, you're not. You're looking in my general direction. There's a difference. He set his cup down, leaned forward slightly. Really look at me. Hold my gaze. Don't look away. She blinked, suddenly nervous. Like, now? Yes, now. Jasmine straightened in her chair, set down her pen, and lifted her eyes to his. For a few seconds she held steady. Then her gaze flickered down to his mouth, back up, over to the window, anywhere but directly at. See? Junho said softly. You ran away. I didn't run. She stopped, bit her lip. Okay, fine. It felt intense. Like, too much. That's exactly the point. Intensity creates connection. Tension. When you hold someone's gaze without flinching, you're telling them you're confident, interested, unafraid. You're inviting them in. But most people break eye contact within a few seconds, because it feels vulnerable. Jasmine nodded slowly, processing. So, I just stare at them? Not stare. Hold. There's a difference. Staring is aggressive, unsettling. Holding is intentional, inviting. He paused, then said, Try again. Look at me and don't look away, no matter what. She took a visible breath, then locked her eyes on his. This time Junho didn't make it easy for her. He held her gaze with the full weight of everything he felt, everything he'd hidden for years. Let himself look at her the way he always wanted to but never allowed, with hunger, with longing, with the kind of intensity that stripped away pretense and left only raw truth. He watched her pupils dilate slightly, watched her lips part, watched a flush creep up her neck. Junho, she whispered, and his name on her lips was a physical thing, a touch, a brand. Don't look away, he commanded quietly. She didn't. For 10 seconds, 15, 20, she held his gaze like her life depended on it, and Junho felt something shift between them, something dangerous and electric and impossible to ignore. Finally, she broke, turning her head with a nervous laugh. Okay, wow, that was a lot. That's how you know it's working, he said, his voice carefully neutral despite the fact that his heart was trying to punch through his ribcage. When it feels like too much. When you want to look away but force yourself not to, that's when you create real attraction. Jasmine fanned herself dramatically. If I do that to some random guy, he's going to think I'm trying to steal his soul. Good, Junho thought viciously. Maybe he'll run away and save me the trouble of scaring him off later. Just practice it, he said instead. Make it natural. Eye contact is everything. As they left the cafe, Jasmine linking her arm through his like she always did, Junho wondered how much longer he could keep this up, how many more lessons he could endure before the truth came spilling out in a confession he couldn't take back. Because every lesson was torture. Every moment teaching her how to attract other men was a knife twisting deeper into his chest. But he couldn't stop. Not when she looked at him with such trust, such hope, such absolute faith that he could help her find what she was looking for, even if what she was looking for was killing him slowly. One lesson at a time. You're doing it wrong. Jasmine looked up from where she was attempting to practice casual touching on Junho's arm, her hand hovering awkwardly above his forearm like she was afraid he might combust. What do you mean I'm doing it wrong? I'm touching you, aren't I? They were in his home office, ostensibly working on her technique. In reality, Junho was discovering new depths to his capacity for self-torture. You're touching me like I'm made of glass, he said, catching her wrist gently. It's too tentative, too hesitant. When you touch someone you're interested in, it should be confident, deliberate, light enough to seem casual, but firm enough to register. He guided her hand down to his forearm, pressing her palm flat against his skin. The contact sent electricity shooting up his arm, and he had to work to keep his voice steady. Like this. You're not asking permission. You're creating connection. Jasmine's fingers curled slightly against his arm, and she was close enough now that he could smell her perfume, something warm and sweet that he'd never be able to smell again without thinking of her. How long am I supposed to touch? She asked, her voice softer now. almost uncertain. 3 seconds, maybe 5. Long enough to register, but not so long it becomes awkward. His thumb brushed against her inner wrist, where her pulse was racing. The goal is to plant the idea. Make them aware of you physically, then pull away before they can fully process it. That seems manipulative. It's not manipulation. It's communication. Touch is a language, Jasmine. When words aren't enough, your hands say everything else. She withdrew her hand slowly, and the absence of her touch felt like loss. Show me again. On me this time. Junho's jaw tightened. Jasmine, how else am I supposed to learn? She held his gaze, challenging. Come on, Professor Kim. Don't tell me you're afraid. Terrified, he thought. Absolutely terrified of what touching you does to me. But he couldn't back down. Not without revealing too much. Fine, he said roughly. He reached out, letting his fingers trail along her shoulder, down her arm, barely grazing her skin. Featherlight, deliberate, his touch lingered for exactly 3 seconds before he pulled back. Jasmine shivered visibly. Oh, see? His voice came out huskier than intended. That's how you do it. Brief. Intentional. Leaving them wanting more. She swallowed hard, her dark eyes searching his face. You're really good at this, because I've been wanting to touch you for years, he thought bitterly. Because every time I do, I have to remind myself to let go. Practice makes perfect, he said instead, shoving his hands in his pockets to keep from reaching for her again. I feel ridiculous. You look beautiful. The words were out before Junho could stop them, honest and raw and completely unguarded. Jasmine stood in front of the full-length mirror in his bedroom, wearing a red dress that should have been illegal. It hugged every curve, fell just above her knees, and made her look like sin wrapped in silk. Her hair was styled in loose waves, her makeup dramatic, and she was practicing different types of smiles based on the absurd tutorial video they'd watched earlier. She turned to look at him, surprise flickering across her face. Really, dangerously beautiful, he thought. Heartbreakingly beautiful. The kind of beautiful that makes men stupid and reckless. Really, he confirmed, keeping his tone light despite the way his chest constricted. But your smile is wrong. She frowned. What's wrong with my smile? It's too big, too friendly. You're smiling like I'm your buddy, not like you're trying to seduce someone. Then show me how to smile seductively, she challenged, hands on her hips, since apparently my natural smile isn't good enough. Junho crossed the room slowly, deliberately, using movement to buy himself time to think. It's not about the size of the smile. It's about what you're communicating with it. A seductive smile is knowing, slightly mysterious, like you have a secret and you're deciding whether or not to share it. He stopped in front of her, close enough that she had to tilt, her head back slightly to maintain eye contact. Try it. Smile at me like you know something I don't. Like you're in control. Jasmine took a breath, then gave him a smile that was absolutely devastating in its innocence. Nothing seductive about it, just pure, genuine warmth. No, Junho said, his voice rough. That's your friend's smile, the one you give everyone. I need something different. Then help me, she said, frustrated. I don't know how to be someone I'm not. You don't have to be someone else. The words came out fiercer than he intended. You just have to show a different side of yourself. The side that knows you're desirable. The side that isn't afraid of your own power. He reached up slowly, telegraphing his movement, and tucked a loose curl behind her ear. His fingers lingered against her jaw. Smile at me like you know exactly what you're doing, like you know I'm affected. Her breath caught. Am I? Affecting you? Every second of every day, he thought desperately. Every moment since I met you. That's not the point, he said instead, dropping his hand, stepping back. The point is confidence, owning your own appeal. Jasmine studied him for a long moment, something shifting in her expression, something calculating and curious and entirely too perceptive. Then she smiled, and this time it was different. Smaller. Knowing. Her eyes stayed locked on his, and one corner of her mouth lifted slightly, like she was amused by something only she understood. Like this? She asked softly. Junho's mouth went dry. Exactly like that. And if you ever smile at another man like that. 2 weeks after the lessons began, Jasmine announced she was ready for the real thing. There's this networking event tomorrow night, she said, sprawled across Junho's couch in yoga pants and a tank top. looking nothing like the polished woman he'd helped create. Tech industry people, entrepreneurs, investors, lots of eligible men. I think it's time to put everything I've learned into practice. Junho felt his stomach drop. Tomorrow? Yeah. You should come too. Moral support and all that. She grinned at him. Plus you can watch your student in action. See if your teaching methods actually work in the real world. This is what you trained her for, he reminded himself viciously. This is literally the entire point. She asked you to help her attract men, and now she's going to do exactly that. Sure, he heard himself say. I'll be there. He spent the next 24 hours trying not to think about it, trying not to imagine Jasmine using everything he'd taught her on some stranger who didn't deserve her, who hadn't spent 15 years learning every expression, every laugh, every tiny detail that made her who she was. The event was held at a sleek rooftop venue in Itaewon, all glass and steel and expensive alcohol. Jasmine arrived wearing the navy blue dress they'd chosen together, her hair swept to one side, her confidence palpable. She looked stunning, and Junho hated every man in the room for getting to see her like this. Wish me luck, she said, squeezing his arm briefly before diving into the crowd. Junho found a spot near the bar where he could watch without being obvious. He ordered a whiskey he had no intention of drinking and tried to prepare himself for what was coming. It didn't take long. Jasmine was talking to a man by the windows, tall, well-dressed, probably a startup founder based on the casual arrogance in his posture. She was using everything Junho had taught her. The eye contact, the smile, the casual touches on the man's arm, his shoulder, the laugh that was bright and engaging without being too much. And it was working. The guy was completely captivated, leaning in, laughing at whatever she was saying, his body language screaming interest. Junho's grip on his glass tightened until his knuckles went white. He watched Jasmine tilt her head, exposing the line of her neck, a move he'd taught her, explained to her, demonstrated for her. Watched her touch her collarbone briefly, drawing attention to her décolletage. Watched the man's eyes follow the movement hungrily. Something dark and vicious unfurled in Junho's chest. Jealousy, yes, but also rage, possessiveness, the primal, irrational fury of watching something precious being offered to someone who hadn't earned it, who didn't understand what they were being given. The man said something that made Jasmine laugh, and then his hand came up to rest on her lower back. Just a casual touch, barely inappropriate, the kind of contact that happened at events like this 1,000 times a night. Junho was moving before conscious thought caught up with physical action. He crossed the rooftop with purposeful strides, his expression cold and dangerous in a way that made other people instinctively step aside. He reached Jasmine and the stranger, and without hesitation, without overthinking, he slid his arm around Jasmine's waist and pulled her firmly against his side. The man's hand fell away immediately. Sorry to interrupt, Junho said, his voice polite but absolutely frigid. But we have that dinner reservation. We need to leave now. Jasmine's eyes went wide. Junho, what are you, now? He repeated, more firmly. His fingers tightened possessively on her hip. The man looked between them, confusion evident. Oh, I didn't realize you were with someone. My apologies. You do now, Junho said coldly. He guided Jasmine away before she could protest, his hand never leaving her waist, his body radiating tension and barely controlled fury. They made it to the elevator before she wrenched away from him. What the hell was that? She demanded, her voice sharp with anger and confusion. We don't have dinner reservations. I was actually making progress with him. The elevator doors closed, sealing them in. Junho jabbed the button for the ground floor harder than necessary. That's exactly the problem, he said through gritted teeth. What problem? That your lessons actually worked? That I was doing exactly what you taught me to do? Yes. The word exploded out of him, too loud in the confined space. He turned to face her fully, and something in his expression made her step back against the elevator wall. Yes, Jasmine. That's exactly the problem. Watching you smile at him, touch him, use everything I taught you on someone who doesn't deserve you, who doesn't know you, who hasn't earned even a second of your attention, it's torture. It's hell. And I can't do it anymore. She stared at him, her chest rising and falling rapidly. The elevator dinged, doors sliding open to the ground floor. Junho stepped out, needing air, needing space, needing distance from this conversation before he said something he couldn't take back. But Jasmine followed him, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. She grabbed his arm, forcing him to stop, to turn, to face her. "What are you saying?" she repeated, her voice softer now but no less intense. Junho looked at her, really looked at her, and felt something break inside him. All the careful control he'd maintained for years, all the boundaries he'd enforced, all the truths he'd swallowed down, gone, shattered, destroyed by the sight of her looking at him with those eyes, demanding honesty he'd spent 15 years avoiding. "I'm saying I can't teach you anymore," he said roughly. "I'm saying watching you learn how to attract other men is killing me. I'm saying that every lesson, every touch, every moment I spend showing you how to make someone else want you, it's torture because you're already everything I want. You've always been everything I want. Since we were kids. Since before I even understood what wanting someone meant." Jasmine's lips parted in shock. "Junho, I agreed to help you because I'm an idiot who can't say no to you. Because I thought maybe if I taught you what men want, you'd somehow realize that I want you. That I've wanted you for years. That every woman I've ever dated was just a placeholder, someone to fill the space you occupied in my head, in my heart, in every thought I had." His voice cracked. "So, congratulations. The lessons worked. You're irresistible. You can walk into any room and have men falling over themselves to get your attention. But the only man whose attention you've ever had, the only man you've ever affected, is standing right here. And he's been in love with you since he was 13 years old." The silence that followed was deafening. Junho couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stare at Jasmine and wait for her to say something. Anything, to either put him out of his misery or destroy him completely. "You..." She stopped, swallowed hard. "You're in love with me?" "Desperately," he confirmed, his voice hoarse. "Completely. Hopelessly. So hopelessly that I agreed to teach you how to attract other men even. Though every lesson was like carving out my own heart. Because making you happy mattered more than protecting myself." Jasmine's eyes were huge, glassy. Her hand pressed to her chest like she was trying to keep her heart from escaping. "Why didn't you say anything? All these years, Junho. All these years, why didn't you tell me?" "Because you're my best friend," he said simply. "Because losing you completely was worse than having you partially. Because I'd rather suffer in silence than risk the friendship that's kept me sane since I was a kid. Because you're worth more than my feelings, worth more than my wants, worth more than anything I could ever ask for." A tear slipped down Jasmine's cheek, and Junho felt his chest constrict painfully. He'd made her cry. He'd ruined everything. 15 years of friendship destroyed because he couldn't keep his mouth shut, couldn't maintain control for one more night. "I'm sorry," he said roughly. "I shouldn't have said anything. Just forget it. Forget all of it. We can go back to..." Jasmine moved so fast he didn't have time to react. She closed the distance between them in 2 strides, grabbed the front of his shirt, and pulled him down to her level. Then she kissed him. It wasn't gentle. Wasn't tentative. It was fierce and desperate, and tasted like tears and chapstick and everything Junho had ever wanted but never let himself have. His hands came up automatically, framing her face, and he kissed her back like a drowning man given air, like he'd been waiting his entire life for this moment and couldn't believe it was real. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jasmine kept her hands fisted in his shirt. "You're an idiot," she whispered. "I know. A complete idiot. I know. Because I didn't need lessons to attract a man, Junho. I needed courage to tell the one I wanted that I've been in love with him since I was 16, and he stayed up all night helping me study for my Korean exam, even though he had his own finals the next day." Junho's brain short-circuited. "What? You heard me," she laughed, the sound wet and broken and beautiful. "Why do you think I asked you to teach me? I wasn't trying to attract random men. I was trying to get you to see me, to look at me the way you looked at your girlfriends, to want me the way I've wanted you for years but was too scared to admit." "Jasmine, I was going to give up," she continued, more tears falling now. "Tonight was my last attempt. I figured if you could watch me flirt with someone else and not react, it meant you really didn't care, that I'd been imagining things. But then you pulled me away, and you said all those things, and..." Her voice broke. "And I realized we're both idiots. We've wasted so much time." Junho pulled her against his chest, holding her so tightly he was probably hurting her but unable to care. "Say it again. Which part? The part where you love me." She pulled back just enough to look up at him. And the smile that spread across her face was radiant. I love you, Junho Kim. I've loved you for years. He murmured against her mouth, kissing her again because now that he'd started, he wasn't sure he'd ever be able to stop. Might need a few more repetitions just to be sure. She laughed into the kiss, and Junho felt something slot into place in his chest. Something that had been missing for 15 years finally clicking home. They had a lot to figure out, a lot of conversations to have, a lot of lost time to make up for. But as Jasmine wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him like he was the only man in the world, like he'd always been the only man in her world, Junho couldn't bring himself to care about any of it. The lessons had worked, after all. Just not the way either of them had planned. Because Jasmine Brooks had never needed to learn how to attract a man. She'd already captured the only one who mattered completely, irrevocably, forever. And Junho Kim had never stood a chance. What do you think will happen next? Will they navigate their transition from friends to lovers? How will their families react to their relationship? Let us know in the comments what you'd like to see in episode 2. If you're new here, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Maybe our next story will be inspired by your home country. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next in Jasmine and Junho's story.